working on these dialogues over the period. Today is the 13th dialogue that we are having today. And then we have our friend Roji, and Roji has just completed her interesting course she did with one of the universities in Indonesia on conflict transformation and peace building. And she's an avid, she has a lot of interest in the issues of peace building and conflict transformation. So she's there. So should we start officially so that we can start the thing? I introduce you and then the whole questions. Should we start if all of us are ready? Okay. Okay, Pankaj, we are starting formally. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hello,
Yes,
Pankaj.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Please continue.
So it is a great pleasure and honor to have with us Intan Sarit. She is from Malaysia. She is a very senior advocate, and she is a mediator. She is the founder of the Amal Mediation Malaysia. In fact, I've been talking to her for quite some time, and we've been exchanging a lot of ideas and interests. And one of the interesting and fascinating thing that she has told is that there is only one hero in her life, and that is Mahatma Gandhi. And she has always been, she's very proud to be the alumni of the same university as Gandhi studied, the same law university, one of the leading law universities at a global level, the Inner Temple in London. So, what a great pleasure to have you with us, Intan. This is a program that we do a dialogue on mediation, where it is basically we talk to senior mediators from all across the world. We are developing a program on community mediation here in India. And mediation is such a very, very important thing in that context. And Gandhi Smriti is the national memorial, as I have already told you, of Mahatma Gandhi. And in that context, we are trying to have this program on community mediation. And in that context, we are also developing some kind of a resource material, course material, myself and Mansi, and we are working on that. So all these interviews, these conversations that we have, these are going to be, highlighted. These are going to be featured in that course material that we are trying to develop on community mediation. So this is something very, very going to be very useful to all the participants. The course material will be available online. It will take probably a month or so, 2 months. In 2 months' time, we should be able to more or less finalize the course material, and all these will be featured. All these interviews will be featured as part of that whole resource material. So we start with the first question today. In fact, Intan is the 13th dialogue we had, and one of the most important person who has actually helped in facilitating this whole dialogue, like majority of these dialogues, is our close friend, our common friend, Elizabeth. So in fact, I think all of us need to thank Elizabeth for connecting all of us together in this wonderful mission to promote mediation and conflict transformation across the world. She should be thanked. In fact, I will share with her that
my idol.
Sorry?
She is my mentor.
She is your mentor.
Yeah.
And that's right. That's right. And she is such a great friend of mine. And like she has been so helpful in all these things. She's passionate about the whole thing. So let us start with the first question. And in fact, when I shared with you the questions, you asked me who actually constructed these questions. So it is Mansi and myself. We have been constructing these questions together, and with all the mediators. You see, I am not a person from the law background or anything. She is the person, but I am learning from all of you this whole, the ABC of law and mediation and arbitration and all. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I'm able to also conduct training now for the judges and lawyers also. So this is so. I must thank each one of you who have been part of this journey to tell me, someone who never knew anything L of law, but now I've started learning, and thankfully I've been able to conduct this training program for the judges. So thanks to Mansi, thanks to you and everyone else who have helped me in this endeavor. So my first question for you, Intan, is yeah, worldwide, due to, you see, in every culture across the world, we find that there is a increasing urbanization and mobility, and each one, every individual are moving towards for increasing their materialistic culture, materialistic goal. So in that context, one of the biggest, the traditional family structures have been virtually, there is a real problem in that. And because of this increasing individualistic societies, we find that single families, not joint families, the traditional informal dispute mechanism methods, like we used to have in extended family systems, say even say 50 years back, 60 years back, they seems to be in real trouble. They seem to be disintegrating. So can you please share your views on how it affects the issues of conflict resolution in institutions like families, as someone who has been working on this issue of community mediation? Intan, please.
Well, firstly, so much for having me tonight. It is such a great honor. It's an immense privilege for me to be here. Like you said, I too attended the Honorable Society of the Inner Temple. And every time I used to go to the library, I would sit by Gandhi's portrait of Gandhi, and I would do my work there. And it is, so heartwarming to be able to speak tonight, to be able to be interviewed for this mediation dialogue. It's an amazing initiative. And again, I would also like to thank Mr. Vedavyas and also Miss Elizabeth Gamara for introducing me to, for connecting us. So thank you so much for taking an interest in my work and in my career as a mediator. As you know, I come from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I am the founder of Amal Mediation, and we practice informal mediation. We execute informal mediation missions. More on that later. So thank you again for having me, and also for preparing such an array of amazing questions. I must say, the questions that you prepared tonight is really wow. I would say, like, in a separate conversation, I want to ask whether I'd be able to publish them, because they're really well thought out and really current and really pertaining to mediation in this day and age. So your first question that you asked, I find that, this resonates with me. So I'm not that young, I know. I'm not as young as Ms. Gamara, but I would consider myself as being young-ish, and having, even in the last 10 years, from my 20s to my 30s, I can see, a great change, the evolution of how it is easier for us to travel now. I mean, not now in the pandemic, before the pandemic, it's easy, it's fingertips, right? Just book a flight and go. I also realized that, in the last 10 years, when you said the materialistic, increased materialistic culture, yes, it's so apparent. And it's so obvious, with the rise of social media, we can't dismiss the fact that social media, has brought out all these possibilities for us as well. So when I studied this question, when you first forwarded it to me, I found is really interesting, because I can say that the common thing that we have, both cultures, in the Malay culture, in your culture as well, is traditional extended families, like you said, right? We still have households that live with parents, everyone, and the same grandparents, parents-in-law, aunties, uncles, and sometimes people have the matriarch, the grandmother, or people like that being the matriarch, right? And it's interesting, because that's where conflicts will occur. It's impossible for conflicts not to happen in places like that. Think about it, right? It's so impossible if you live with 20 other people and every day is just happy, hi, what are you cooking today? Ooh, no, of course there will be conflict. What I'm used to as well, because I come from a huge family as well, although my own family, my own unit, it's just the three of us, and that's enough conflict, I tell you. But with my parents' extended family, we have our own sort of own crisis that we have to solve, problems that we have to solve. So when I think about about traditional families having conflicts, I often think about the Malay dramas that are portrayed on TV, on television. You know, the soap operas, the TV shows, the drama where this person will fight with this person and then not talk to this, and I can't help but also realize that we have that in common because it is also portrayed in Bollywood films. And I believe all our films and all our dramas will always be derived from, your Bollywood films because it's very famous, right, in Malaysia. And even one of your heroes even got knighted in our country, by the way. Datuk Shah Rukh Khan. Datuk is like a sir. So going back to the question, I think that in the now day and age, I would say in my time, this is my time. Or I like to think that it's still my time. It's so obvious. The conflicts are even more obvious. Like I said before, with the rise of social media. Now traditional families, right? So if we, like me, I have my uncles, aunties, and my brothers are married, both brothers are married, they have their own families. What happens if we start disputing with each other? The worst part about this as a mediator I see is there's no more family meetings. So I would say traditional families, like just like in the movies, just like normal big families, they will often have their own system. I'm sure each and every one of you will have this at home before growing up. Family meetings. If someone gets into everyone 8:30 be at grandma's house, we have a family meeting. That is mediation in itself, I feel. For me, that's level 1 mediation. Level 1 mediation is when you have meetings like that and you sort of, try to sort out the grievances and then everyone goes home. Because maybe at the time, like you said, internet or social media, it's not really big, right? So you just have a problem and you keep it in your family and then you try to solve it and then you live your own lives, right? That's level 1. That's a normal one. If families and households still have that at home now, congratulations, well done. I mean, that's the easiest point, the easiest way to do it. But I feel in my time, this day and age, if I have a dispute with my brothers, with my family, it's worse. It's really difficult to try to mediate things within the family because, like you said, increase, like mobility, urbanization. I can just decide, you know what? I don't want to live in this house anymore. I want to move to New York tomorrow. Is that a problem? I can do that. And there's always, the chance of me transferring to another company. Also, with, of course, the rise of materialistic culture, as you mentioned as well, the fear of a conflict resolution, this invites more conflict resolutions, more conflicts, and this gives business to conflict resolution businesses. So mediators are actually profiting from this. I have friends who practice family mediation in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, even Malaysia. And yes, they are profiting from the rise of materialistic culture because now family members are more, sorry to say, materialistic, right? They're more calculative. Oh, if my sister gets that, then what would I get? And then this is when the fights happen. And this is true enough. Even when the parents are still alive, most cases that I've seen, I've observed or even lived through, when the parents are still alive, that's when they're still calculating, oh, my sister's going to get this, or my brother's going to get that. But if you get that, then what would I get? Oh, are you going to get that? Or are we going to quadruple that? Some businesses that are not even in place yet would also be calculated like, oh, in the future, they're going to do this. Maybe that's going to be mine. So with the rise of this and the rise of this kind of world, like everything is easily attainable, or we think it's easy to attain because once we open social media, Instagram, Facebook, wow, that's it. We see someone going on a private jet. We think that's an easy life. I want that, I want this, I want that. It makes us a bit more greedy. So when I feel conflict coming out of things like this, it is there. It is growing. It's just that if you look at it from a mediator's point of view, a formal mediator point of view, they are profiting from this. Family mediators would say, aha, yeah, work money, because this is what people do now. They bring in a third party which is like not a lawyer, but a mediator specialist who talk about inheritance or property, or mostly conflicts arising out of that. Or we're talking, if there's also divorce happening and the divorce has, things that are tied to property or division of assets and things like that. We also try to bring in a separate family mediator that has to be impartial, has to be agreed by all parties. And basically sort it out. And sometimes people actually lawyers actually do get training, family mediation training, in order to run this. And then there's also another way that I also see all the time, is having a family friend. They do this in Brunei, a lot in Brunei. They invite a family friend, or they invite someone who they think is completely impartial, to come and try to solve the conflicts that will be present, right? So this happens as well. And then some people actually also would like the family mediator to come, but you can train a family member. So meaning they want it to be completely confidential. Although mediation is already a confidential process, if they don't trust the process for some reason, they want their own to handle it, but they want this person to go for training with a family mediator. We do provide that service as well. So when I think about, conflict resolution in this day and age, I always wonder, because mediation, and I do think about, coming from a family like mine, there's bound to be conflicts, right? I'm the only daughter in the family as well, bound to be extra conflicts and drama. I always wondered if it was, a long time ago, 30 years ago, would I find it so difficult to solve a conflict in my family? I would say yes. I would say that's very true, because 30 years ago, if someone had a problem, right? Like I said, we just have sort of the family meeting mediation, and sort of share our grievances with each other. Like, I'm unhappy about this, I'm happy about that, unhappy about that. But now it might not even get to that stage with social media. It's just a matter of time. I see cases that people are about to solve and then they pull back because, oh, today my sister-in-law wrote on her Instagram that I look like a cow or something like that, or I am not suitable for this job, or I don't belong in this family. So this, creates even stronger tension, makes it worse. So I do feel that conflict resolution in families have changed, radically changed. And it is really important for us to preserve the value and the culture of keeping it in the family. Let's talk about it. My suggestion would be always choose the matriarch, always choose the leader of the family that will be impartial to sort of mediate both parties, if possible. I really, I think the best way forward is to incorporate those values and modern day values. So meaning incorporate, like the whole family mediator, training the family member. I do believe that there is something there. So I often wonder, like, why would anyone listen to a family mediator instead of your own grandmother, the matriarch, whatever? Because you have to also admit, in this world, we are also getting quite cynical. I don't know about you, but if you agree, everyone's getting a bit cynical. Even with the matriarch of the family, they would say, but who does she love more? Who is she going to give her bracelet to? This granddaughter, this grandson? She's going to give her land to? This granddaughter, this grandson? And people would rather have an outsider intervening into the family and doing the process. So in a way, that's good. In a way, that's good, because then the process will be completely mediation and be completely following step by step. But in another way, it's also sad that we've lost the value, we've lost trust in the process and the institution, in individuals, because we've become so cynical. So I think the best way forward in institutions like families is to have, to be able to solve your own conflicts. That would be my number one. Is be able to solve your conflict at home. Why we hence every time will need to go through a mediation training or have a mediation handbook that they can use. Yeah, so that's my take.
Perfect. I think that's really well put together. Very interesting perspective that you have tried to put in. In fact, linked to that particular question is, you see, can you hear me, Intan?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So linked to this particular question also entails, you see, when we are trying to develop meaningful community capacities, when we are promoting community mediation program, that means we are developing the capacities of the communities and also seeing how the conflict patterns are changing when we are pushing through different forms of community mediation at different levels, different institutions, like we are talking about the families, the workplaces, etc., etc. Can you please share your perspective on how do we enhance the capacities of communities actually to be able to handle local conflicts? As we have been discussing on the whole essence of community mediation, like what are the ways in which actually we can enhance the capacities of communities to deal with this? Because in the courts, in fact, our respected Chief Justice of India, he has been for the last several ever since he has taken over as the Chief Justice, he has been giving a lot of emphasis on this essence of mediation and all. So in that context, how do we enhance the capacities of communities to be able to handle those local conflicts, whether it is in the family or workplace, in the society as such? So how do we do that?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. I feel that this is a very, very interesting one as well, and it's very current because it's been something that we've been discussing for quite a while. From my perspective, everything starts from education, right? So I think, from me training my own community, I see that education is key. Firstly, like you said, change conflict patterns. I think that's that's the number one thing, because you keep seeing repetition. I'm sure in your own communities as well, you see a lot of repetition in conflict. So I think changing the pattern will come from education. And I think when it comes to this mediation training and training on civic education, citizenship education is really important. And this is at the heart of my Amal mediation. It is at the heart of my think tank that I wish to launch soon. So in this sense, when you said that, in the sense you said that, the non-violent communication skills that you wish to supply, and we've been in talks and to collaborate and to bring something like that to Malaysia. I think that could obviously change conflict patterns, right? That could definitely also we could start building community capacity. But what I thought of is changing conflict patterns is necessary when it is too late. I always say too late in the sense that we never had any communication skills in school. We never had skills training or subject in school. We never had any sort of mediation skills in school. I only learned about mediation at law school and at bar school. We never had that ever. It is never spoken of. It's not taboo, but they see it as something very, very, very minuscule. Like, there's no need to talk about it. You just know how to do it, how to communicate. But actually, it's really important. And you see it. I see it in my society. I see it in my everyday life. I see it in my job, day-to-day operations of my job. I see how, if we could include that in schools, if we could include that in institutions, in universities, communication skills, non-violent communication skills, the strategies that you can adopt to communicate effectively, I would think that conflicts, we wouldn't be facing the same kind of conflicts, right? Or certain conflicts could be avoided completely. It is so, important for us to think about also, in terms of building community capacity, to also start from school. So that's why, like, Mr. Vedavias and I are also part of a peer mediation project, an exciting peer mediation project. And I feel that that's so important as well, to be included, in schools, in institutions, to train individuals from a very young age. The skills that you need to resolve conflicts, the skills that you need to communicate with others. It's so interesting, like the peer mediation project that we had, the pilot project a few weeks ago, where we had a participant as young as 6 years old who was so interested to learn communication skills, mediation skills, and she was from South America. Imagine if we can quadruple that effort. Imagine if we can, I feel like we can train kids in school, communication skills, like I said, mediation skills, and how do you resolve conflicts. Like, I was inspired about the peer mediation. I was inspired by actually our mutual friend as well, Miss Gamara as well, who told me that she went to peace school when she was 10, I believe. And in peace school, they teach you to resolve conflicts in the playground. So you go to the playground and you see people fighting, and you start using the steps. They have a handbook and they have steps by steps as to, what do you need to do? What do you need to, what do you need to say? What do you need to check? A checklist. And I feel if we can have that, we can start making individuals communicate more effectively from a young age. Because like I said, you want to change mindsets and you want to change conflict patterns now with individuals that's already gone through everything. It would take training, yes, and you would have to practice it artificially, right? You have to practice it like, I watch myself and do it. But if you train individuals from a very young age, it will become second nature to them, right? And imagine if we start doing that and individuals can communicate more effectively. Imagine what they feel, how this could, how this could actually create or spark a sense of responsibility to be, to do what they can to better their community. So I do believe that it comes from education and training. And another thing that I really want to talk about is also civic education, because we never had that in school. I never learned about the role of, sadly, government or the function of government or parliament until I went to college, A-levels in London. And I learned about the system in another country, not in my country. So it's only, since I moved back and I realized, and I don't even know as a voter, what are my rights and things like that. So I feel if that should also be taught alongside communication skills, in order to shape a better community and to shape someone's capacity in the community as well. When they can do that, then they'll feel like, wow, I can do more in my community. I can contribute more. Yes, I don't know if that answers.
No.
Mr. Various?
No. We are all listening to you very, very intently. Yes, Intan. Hello, Intan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. We are listening to you intently, and towards the end, we will have a discussion with the points that you have asked. Yes. Absolutely brilliantly, you have put this whole point on patterns of conflicts and the enhancement of capacities of people at the community level who are into the whole idea of community mediation. Well, now my friend Rosie is going to ask the next question to you. Rosie, are you there?
Yes,
Can you
yes,
hear us?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead
Thank
with
you
your
for
question.
allowing me to speak.
No. Please.
Yes. Uh, so I have a question in my mind. So can I ask right now, Intan?
Yes. Please.
Can I just add one more thing out?
Yes, definitely.
Oh,
Please.
yes, sure.
It's also discourse and dialogue will need to be, be open and to create some kind of for the general.
Well, Intan, can you hear me?
Hear you? Hear me?
Yeah. I would request you, because no, it seems again network issue. If you can switch off your video,
Okay.
because then it will be easier to, because that will need. Yes, I think now please speak. Let us see. Can you please talk now?
Okay. Better?
Yes, definitely better, because at the end what we will do is we will all switch on our videos to take the snapshot. So
Okay.
because of the connectivity in every all our respective areas, so if we put on the video,
Yeah,
it is
even
very
mine as
difficult.
well. My
Yes,
connectivity.
now you see your voice is crystal clear. So that is the whole
Okay,
thing.
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh wow, thanks. Sorry,
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Okay,
Yes,
apologies.
you are making one point in
Yeah,
time.
so I wanted to say, in I missed out this other point. In changing conflict patterns and increasing community capacity. It's also ongoing discourse and dialogue to create awareness, right?
Mhm.
About the responsibility of every individual in terms of how they communicate, in terms of how they how they avoid conflicts, and also how they would like to resolve conflicts. I think it's really important, and some people don't like to talk about it. In my country, it's tabooish because you might just sort of poke beehives that a lot of people don't want to address. So that's also another challenge. Yeah.
Mhm.
So moving on to question 3, I believe, Roji.
Yes, Rosie,
Yeah.
please.
Yes. So I have a question to you, Intan, that
Yeah.
we have been seeing various methods and strategies on indigenous community mediation practices across the world. So I'm pretty much sure that there must be some strategy or this community mediation practices happening in Malaysia as well. So can you please highlight on how these practices have been doing, and what kind of practices that indigenous people or the community people of Malaysia did to solve conflict and to put successful mediation process?
Okay. Yeah.
And also another question
Uh-huh.
is that how are these strategies changing in this contemporary times?
All right. Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
in
Roji,
fact,
for the question.
I want to add to what
Yeah.
Rosie pointed out. Only yesterday, no, day before yesterday, I was having a very intense discussion with a friend
Yeah.
who has been from Afghanistan,
Yeah.
and on the situation over there and all we were discussing. And he was talking about the indigenous community mediation practices, which Rosie was talking. So probably, I'm sure you are aware of it. That is the Jirja, the very, very ancient traditional mediation, community mediation practices that Afghanistan had, which no, it's a very famous approach. Like the Jirja, or in Rwanda,
Yeah.
they were having the gachacha courts and all those things. So
Yeah.
I think this question is very pertinent to like how the changing contemporary world scenario is having an impact on these indigenous community mediation practices, because worldwide there has been such powerful models of indigenous methods. But as Rosie pointed out some uh, issues, what do you see in these aspects?
Okay. Thank you so much, Roji, and thank you so much, Mr. Vedavias, for your questions. So first, I'm going to address Roji's question, which is pertaining how am I seeing...
Ma'am, can you on your video, because we are doing
Oh.
a YouTube live, please.
Do that. Okay, I will. Is this correct? Okay.
No, ma'am, no.
No.
No, ma'am.
I think there is a problem in connectivity in Malaysia, it seems also, no?
No, no, sir.
Pankaj.
No, the
It's not,
connectivity is fine, but I think, okay, I got it.
it.
It's this one. Is this okay? Oh, no. No.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let me try again. Don't worry. Da, 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 da. Okay, let me try to... Oh, God. Okay, let me try to turn on my video and see maybe this would work. Send in your video. Okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
now I'm going to turn off. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
okay. Now it's all right.
It's switched again,
Sorry,
ma'am.
it's my first time using WebEx. In Malaysia, we only use Zoom and Google Meet, so it's a very, very new, new experience for me. It's amazing, actually.
Again, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that.
Ma'am, switch off again, ma'am. Please kindly on.
Is it okay now?
Wait.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
No. Oh dear. Okay. What do you need me to do?
Hello.
Hello, what do you need me to do? Should I
There is
turn
an
on my...
icon. Just you have to start your video icon there
Ah,
near to the
okay,
button.
I will start my video, yeah? Okay. This is... Okay,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
okay,
Now you are visible, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
okay, okay. So I will
Okay.
just be like this, yeah? Is that okay? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, so first I would I'm gonna address Roji's question first when she asked, are there any community mediation practices in Malaysia? And how these are changing, and then we can go to the indigenous question next. Yes, so as you know, mediation is not very known in Malaysia. Even when I came back and I was working for the Attorney General and I wanted to stop and I wanted to do mediation, a lot of people have asked why I wanted to be a yoga teacher because they thought it was meditation and not mediation. So that's my sort of party story. But putting, jokes aside, mediation is not known because we package it in a different way. It's been mediation, but we just don't call it mediation. So in the community, different neighborhoods, they always set up sort of like a community watch, right, to sort of not resolve conflicts, or people can complain, sort of like an ombudsman, but informal. And then most of the time, they get their local MPs to sort of mediate if there is a dispute in the neighborhood. So that's one of the practices that I see, and it's still being practiced now, but it's not so popular because people would rather write on social media all their grievances. That's the culture now in Malaysia. It's very digital, and we are keyboard warriors, and they would rather not address it like that. So, but that has been established since, I would say, since the 80s, that has been established. It's called Rukun Tetangga, or maybe slightly later than that. And that has changed now because, like I said, they don't really do that because nobody receives the training, the appropriate training for it. It's more of like setting it up and then just letting it survive. And if you have any problems, you try to do that. But now, in this growing time, I think people would often, like I said, take their grievances to social media, or if it's really bad, they take it to court, and that has become the norm even in our culture now, pop culture in our society. People would rather go to court and settle it, and sue each other, which is really sad because mediation is a tool that they could use, and it would cost them close to nothing, and it would be very quickly so effective, right? So that's how I see, and that's also one of the things which I think we need to increase community mediation. We need to increase more practices of community mediation. The second question would be about the indigenous. Well, that's okay. So basically, the indigenous part.
Yeah, indigenous community mediation practices, no, like the
Yeah,
the Jirja of the Afghanistan, or you see the Gachacha courts in Rwanda and all.
yeah.
So,
So I would start with Malaysia first because that's what I'm familiar with, and then we can discuss the rest of the world. So my take on the the mediation practices in Malaysia, indigenous especially, that's because of my own experience. So I always say that I learn about mediation from the age of 5, 6, because my father was, this will be in the later questions, but my father was a politician. And in his constituency, we had about 3 different tribes, indigenous communities. So mediation would often happen in the weekends every fortnight, and it will be my whole Saturday being spent following him, even at a very young age. So that's where I actually learned about mediation, even though I didn't know it was mediation. So how I see it, how they do it, in terms of practicing community mediation within their community, is that every Saturday, if you have a conflict, you would go and meet with the head of the village or the head of the tribe, either Tok Batin or Kutu Kampung. And it's like this with all the villages, right? Especially in the indigenous village. And if the Tok Batin, which is the head of the village, it has some kind of conflict of interest or is compromised. And then they will call in sort of UN will call it insider mediator, and usually it's a local MP to ensure, you know, really impartiality. So in that sense, what they used to solve would be conflicts regarding land, you know, land deals, regarding you know, things that they, you know, their everyday day-to-day life. So I feel that that's being widely practiced until today, which is the head of the village is the mediator, and he would actually use mediation process even without receiving the training. He would have the caucuses, he would meet with them together, or he would meet with them individually. And sometimes, you know, if you can't facilitate, because obviously mediation is a facilitation, right, of conversations. And if they can't create a win-win situation, then the head of the village, the mediator, will suggest creative solutions, will suggest solutions for them to follow, and that's still will prescribe solutions for them to follow, and that's still being practiced now. It's just that I feel that in this day and age, it's not the same anymore, because a lot of them are a lot of them are educated. A lot of them don't live in their villages anymore. They sometimes are in the city, in Kuala Lumpur, and most of them don't follow that rule anymore. And it's very interesting because, you know, in places like Australia have started doing, you know, their mediation services have expanded to the Indigenous communities, where you can actually do formal mediation or get formal mediation training and go back to your villages and perform mediation there, which I find is something to look at in Malaysia, which I find, since times are changing. And also, like I said, trusting the process is one thing, and making sure that the head of the village is also not compromised, is also impartial. You know, it's very, very important for us to look at this model. So that's that. And then you wanted to ask about tribes, about indigenous communities, sorry, in Afghanistan and in places like Nigeria. Is that what you said? Nigeria. So what I've come to know, so one of my very good friend decided to include me in one of her trainings with an indigenous community in Nigeria. Even the connectivity, like, it was 100 times worse than this, but we made it in the end. What I really adopted from that until now, that I use in my talks or in my trainings, is the huddle and going to the bushes. So they use different mediation strategies to resolve their conflicts, to air their grievances. Usually it's within women, right? Women conflicting, disputing with other women, or women conflicting with you know, men in their tribes. So they do the huddle, which is basically a mediation, which is you air your grievances. You know, you have this caucuses and sessions, and they also do going to the bushes for training. Is they sort of collaborate in small circles, and that's how, you know, they resolve their conflicts. They sort of divide themselves in different groups, and then they see what they can resolve, and then they will exchange information. What can you resolve? What can you? And I adopted that since then. So that was one of the practices that I am familiar with. But like Mr. Vedbias posted a question saying that in these global times changes, there are more, you know, indigenous communities are actually, going through more in this ever-changing global world, right? Like you mentioned, Afghanistan. I think in that sense, when you're talking about informal mediation, that's when it's really about creating awareness. I think in places, I think this answers your question, right? I just want to check.
Yes, absolutely,
absolutely. Yeah.
In fact, as we talk, like as you were rightly pointed out on the essence of some of the experiences that you had, and those, especially I was talking to this friend in Afghanistan, and he said that had this whole structure been strengthened, these indigenous mediation practices, it would have been much easier to, probably this whole thing that has happened now in Afghanistan, that could have been avoided in some way or the other.
So like I said, firstly, creating awareness. Like you said, it could be avoided. But what I would want to share in terms of when we're talking about mediation in the context of, conflict, being in a conflict, being in the middle of a really massive conflict, right? What I want to talk about would be my experience with United Nations, UNDP Women, a few years ago in Davao, where we were invited to participate and train in a workshop called Insider Mediators, which is basically the aim is to train insiders from within their community, one or two mediators, or maybe all of them, to be able to be equipped to communicate in such context, in such, with aggressive parties, with if they find themselves in danger, in certain danger, this is how they communicate, this is how they mediate certain situations. So I find that was really effective, although it's impossible, to have this outreach to everyone. But I also feel that, like I said, education comes, not education, but the awareness of how to communicate effectively, even if it's so basic. Even if I find that even if they were trained, maybe not the full-blown UN package or the full-blown mediator, you are a mediator now. No, even this is just open-ended questions. Get yourself out of trouble. Or even if it's just, if you want to negotiate, make sure you put this and this first. Make sure you don't use words that would trigger. Make sure, you do this. Even if it's just communicating like that, or don't show emotions. Learn how to control your emotions. Learn how to empathize with, if someone's putting you in danger, learn how to empathize with that person and learn how to respond in a calm way. Even all the strategies could save them from a lot of trouble, or could even, we're talking about, if you want to talk about avoiding the conflict in the first place, yes. I mean, of course, if every individual in this world was born, a mediator like Kofi Annan or President Ota, yes, we wouldn't have conflicts like this in this world today. But that's not the reality. So another thing, we can only think about the future, right? In terms of making sure that people are better communicators in the future. Hence, that's why I am a big fan of peer mediation and non-violent communication skills being taught in schools and at a very young age. But thinking about programs in Indigenous communities and communities that are in danger, in great threats, I would say, I would say things are changing now, and there's a lot that we can do as mediators. I think the mediation community or the collective, mediators around the world could do a lot more in helping training certain parties around the world, because we now have, we can connect wherever we are. Even if the line is so bad, we still can connect. Like I said, it's not about the full-blown you're a mediator now, but it's just about the little strategies that could help. Yes. In fact,
question which is linked to this. No, you said you have had a lot of experience of those with this Nigerian, then your Nigerian traditional mediators, also your own experience in your own country. You see, one of the important thing which I've always been thinking is, when say two groups are in conflict, say at a local level, you see, so there comes the question of power and hegemony and all those dominant discourses. How these these narratives, these issues actually impact the process of community mediation. The whole essence of power, the whole essence of dominant discourses, the whole essence of hegemony, where one group wants to have greater power over the other, or have a have a greater say over the other. So how does it impact? What do you think the whole process of community mediation.
Thank you. In that sense, I always say that, again, at the heart of my career in terms of community mediation, it can only be made possible if individuals are willing to want to learn and willing to understand there is a need to be able to participate in your community effectively, to be able to communicate effectively. So in that sense, I always believe trust in institutions is so important. So, even the impact, from your question, basically the impact of power and dominant discourses on community mediation. If individuals trust the institutions, if they trust process, if they feel there is a need, if there is a need, if this person, there's always, of course, in every country, there will always be powers trying to overpower the other power. And as a community, sometimes you feel that you can't do anything, especially coming the future questions when it comes to politics, right? And it's back to trust in the institutions. If you don't trust the institutions, then you wouldn't want to participate in community. You wouldn't want to resolve conflicts with each other. And I think it all comes from that. And being this, like Foucault argues that power comes from everywhere, actually, right? So I think that's a great sentiment in terms of community mediation. You can make a change in your community. You don't have to be at the top. I think people often, sometimes if you're young, not now, not in recent times, I have to argue, even in my own country, which I'm proud of, my young people, the young generation take initiatives to voice their grievances, to fight for what's right for the people. But there are also some segments of our society would just want to be complacent or think that they have, they can't make a change. You see a lot of that as well. But in the spirit of, power comes from everywhere, you can make a change from where you are. That is so true with community mediation. In terms of, when I say, like I said, from my own organization, Informal Mediation Missions, is also to create awareness, right? To impart knowledge on my community as well. And even though, sometimes some of the people say, why are you doing this? It's not going to go anywhere. You're not in a position where you can create a voice. But no, I do believe that community mediation is about the willingness of anyone, any individual wanting to make a difference, wanting to make a difference in their community. It could take one person, but it could spiral. It could take, start with two people who want to voice what they think, and other people could follow suit. If it's really, it's not in the self-interest of the parties, and it's of course for the greater good. So in that sense, I always feel that it's possible. All things are possible if there is a willingness. And I think this starts from, again, in terms of a young, from the younger generation, is to shape their minds, shape their minds and personalities to say, hey, I have a responsibility to my community to make it better. It doesn't matter. I can start. I have something that I can offer my community. And I think in that sense, we always have to stick to our guns and feel that responsible. Because every day, I don't know about you, Mr. Pervez, every day I do see that some people feel that if they're not affiliated to the higher levels of society, or not affiliated to the top, or they feel that other people have excessive power over them, they don't feel the need to be responsible. Even when they see someone getting robbed in the middle of the street, as a community member, they're just like, aha, let's just take a video of this, or yeah, it's not my problem. So even especially when it comes to issues, other issues as well, unity issues, racial issues, or even things like, pollution. Some people say that's not my problem. Why would I make a difference in the world? Not understanding the ripple effect. And again, this comes from education. This comes from the innate, the innate feeling of I'm responsible. I can do something to make a difference in my community. Yeah.
Fine. That's really very interesting points that you have tried to flag off. I think Roji has our next question. Roji, can you please ask the? Yes, please. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, Intan, you have beautifully put out the way a community mediator should behave. I like the very line that community mediator should be the one, who should transform the society and the community, and should have the will to do it, but not by the force. I like that very lines, and I have a question. Is that I feel like community mediator is not just about solving, uh, conflict between two individuals, but also being an important tool for social intervention that designed to bring positive systematic changes in the society. So, what are your views regarding in this?
Thank you, Roji. Excellent question. It's one of my favorite in your list of questions. Thank you again. I would call myself a community mediator as well. Like I said before, like I mentioned before, the line that you repeated, that's very nice. Thank you. Yes. Is basically the ethos of that, right? A community mediator doesn't, mediation, this took me a long time to understand. Mediation, yes, it's to resolve conflicts. Yes, that is at the heart of it. Formal mediation, you resolve conflicts instead of taking certain cases to court. But what do you call informal? I always say, when I talk to people, what do you do in formal mediation? I'm an informal mediator. What is that? And when people say, oh, I get it, you resolve conflicts, but you don't record it, or it's not recorded in court. No, this is the very definition of informal mediation. It's community mediators bring, social intervention, or try to make positive changes in their community, or try to spread and feel responsible to instill an idea or instill certain causes that needs to be addressed or needs to be taken seriously. So that's very interesting. So whenever I talk to my friends or people, my colleagues, they would often say, well, you mean informal mediators are basically activists? Is that what you're saying? I would stay away from that term. I don't think we are activists. I believe that we are sort of mediating. We're mediating, the information, connecting the information, basically the knowledge or the cause that needs to be addressed. So with UNDP, it's always about education, women empowerment, women against violence, refugees, indigenous communities. My favorite one is, of course, unity, unity, to bring about unity, racial unity, because in my country, we come from a multicultural country. We have, we have so many races that we need to get along. So, being an activist will have to be focused on one particular cause, and that would be your cause, and you aggressively fight for it. Mediating it, being a community mediator, is to bring about positive changes or to address certain issues by way of connecting, right? You're connecting your community together, people together, you're creating awareness, you're having dialogues, or in another form dialogues, mediation as well, when you have dialogues about it. So in that sense, community mediators, one of the job description would be, yes, to bring about changes and social intervention, to bring positive changes to the community. I would say that is when people ask me, what do you do? I'm a mediator, but that is my main job. People often get confused, but this is the thing, Mediators Beyond Borders International, which I am the Malaysian representative of that organization. This is they are at the helm of it, and this is their ethos, and they believe in this cause greatly. And like I said, this is the definition of informal mediation as a community mediator. So I hope that answers your question, Roger.
Yes,
Yes.
perfect. Rosie has, yes,
Yes.
Rosie, please continue.
Okay. So, Intan, I have another question.
Yes.
So community mediators be highly skilled professionals. There are people with the community mindset that can be better to resolve conflicts at the level of communities.
Okay, thanks for that question. I said again,
It's not audible.
I said earlier, community mediators, when it comes to resolving conflicts, right? We'll talk about resolving conflicts and bringing about social intervention. So when you talk about resolving conflicts, like I said, with Insider Mediator UNDP, went beyond to actually train people within the community so that they can best train their community. So just like mediators, that's what they do. They ship out mediators to parts of the world, to Africa, to Asia, to South America, in order to train other mediators. Not to say to become mediators, not to say, oh, you're accredited, I'm licensed, no, but to have training so that they can know the strategies, they know this, and they know what to do, how to handle conflicts better. But I believe, I'm a believer, if someone, because if you're talking about resolving conflicts, some people are chosen because they might not do the training, they don't know what to do, they don't know, but they know, they're familiar with the issues, right? They're familiar with the issues, or they have a breadth of knowledge about that subject matter. So, like if it's a dispute between fishermen, maybe this person has an in-depth knowledge about fishing, or engineers have an in-depth knowledge about engineering, or also chosen due to someone's. Sorry, not clear. Is it clear now, Roji? Is it clear now?
Hello.
Hello. Is it clear
Yes.
now? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So so some people are chosen because of their familiarity about that subject matter. Some people are chosen because of their character, because they're honest, they're capable of resolving conflicts, or their integrity is intact, and they're impartial, right? But then most people who end up doing this, resolving conflicts in the community, most people would say, aha, you're so good at doing this, why don't you join politics? I know that's how it works in my country. Most people who have show or display that kind of skill to go out, join politics, which is actually not the way to go sometimes. But when it comes to community mediators bringing about social intervention, I would say it doesn't have to be highly skilled mediator or someone who has 10,000 mediation accreditations. It doesn't work like that. It will be an individual who feels very passionately about something that needs to be addressed. I think that's always how it works, right? How someone who really believes and is willing to take on the cause, and willing to mediate this in this person's community. I think that's enough. And of course, with that will come, the education, the training, or the ways to do it, because research and things like that. So to answer your question, Roji, someone with a community mindset, it's can be better to resolve conflicts at the level of communities. I would say, yeah, why, I would say I would agree to that, because you don't need to be highly qualified in order to resolve conflicts, as long as you're familiar in that situation, or if you want to bring about social intervention into your community, you don't have to be the most qualified person in the room. You don't have to be the one who went to Harvard or Cambridge or Oxford. You know, although that could help. I'm not saying that that's not dismissing it, but that could help. But it is also the willingness, and you know, it comes to your intention. Why are you doing it? If you're willing to do it, I always believe that, yeah, that's what we want. We want more of in our communities. We want more willing people to address causes such as that. And I think another thing that I want to bring up, you know, in relation to this question, is social media. I think we talk about community mediators. How do I sort of connect community mediators with the young people in this day and age? If you want to talk about, you know, community mediators in your communities, in normal neighborhoods or in villages, is different compared to community mediators that we see now in this day and age, or at least where I'm from. People are, you know, let's not be in denial. You know, people are always constantly on social media, and sometimes they get inspiration. Their role models are social media leaders. So I always believe that community mediators could be born. It's whether you become a social media person after you become a community mediator, or most social media people, leaders, will then become community mediators, because people are often drawn to what they see on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. And this is what people do in Indonesia, and also some parts in Malaysia as well. We have very, 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 you know, famous social media ambassadors or social media influencers that often talk about problems in our community. And sometimes they are, you know, they are encouraged to bring up certain issues, because that's how the community would be interested, you know, to create traction or to create awareness. I think in this day and age, we don't employ that enough. Even myself, I don't employ that enough, which I should, because that's also, you know, if we look at it positively, it could also be a way to address certain issues, and also could also be a way to increase the ease for a community mediator to bring about positive changes, or to carry out, you know, dialogue, discourse in that way, or to promote their causes that way. Yeah.
Thank you, Intan. In fact, in the context of what Roji was asking regarding his capacities of people who are into the whole process of community mediation, and you yourself have been talking at length on the essence of, you know, the communication skills that are needed in the whole process of mediation, so that you know, we can enter into a process of a positive conflict transformation. As we have also been discussing over a period of time, see, with you on the essence of non-violent communication, and yourself underline that in your perspectives just a short while back. You see, when we are talking of non-violent communication, it is essentially a holistic communication process, which entails, you know, promotion of mutual respect, greater understanding, acceptance of each other's point of view, trust, greater engagement, and, you know, enhancement of human good. So in this context, I would like to split my questions into three parts. First is how important you see is to, you know, promote this whole phenomena of non-violent communication in community mediation process. That's the first part. The second part is, you know, in any community mediation programs or training, etc. How do you think, what would be the framework in which how we can incorporate non-violent communication as something which is an, you know, must in any of these training on community mediation? How do you think we can promote ideas, concepts?
Okay.
Yes.
And the third one, you said the three parts.
It's virtually three parts. It's virtually three parts actually.
Oh,
Yes,
that was.
that's right.
So just
Incidentally, I can tell you Mansi is doing a PhD on mediation and non-violent communication.
okay.
So that is also interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So for the question, so how important is it to promote nonviolent communication skills in community mediation practices? Okay, so firstly, we have to recognize, for me, I have to recognize that in order to bring about, I'm going to answer your question, the second part and then the first part, the second half and then the first half. So I need to recognize or to bring, to make people know or be aware of the fact that Malaysia, we achieved our independence. This is our independence month, August, 31st of August, so Independence Day. 1957 was the year. So we achieved that without bloodshed or violence, just via a mediator, and just via sort of discussions, negotiations, and by sort of, at the time, the mediator was Tunku Abdul Rahman. He also went to the inner temple like Gandhi and myself. So yeah, so in that sense, I feel that I always try to emphasize on this point that we have to recognize and appreciate that we're one of the countries that got our independence via non-violent communication sort of channel, right? And I do believe that it is really important to promote non-violent communication in community mediation practice because you missed out. There was a question before this about different political affiliations, and I feel that in this growing day and age, I do see how people communicate with each other, how the way we talk to each other, the way we communicate with each other, the way we sort of air out our differences and how we think, especially when it comes to politics of all things nowadays, right? Malaysia just appointed our ninth prime minister a few hours ago. So this is very, very, that's why when I read your question about this and the question before this, I was very, it really resonated with me because of how people are talking about whatever that's happening in our community and, the language that they use with each other, even though when, it is because of different political affiliations or different beliefs or different cultures, everything come into play. So I always believe that if I have the opportunity to bring non-violent communication skills training into my country, and if I could promote it, it would be, because of this. I see my community and I see the society that I live in, and I read the WhatsApp, I'm sure everyone, WhatsApp messages has been circulated, or I open social media and I see what people are talking about, or I see how people talk to each other when they don't agree on something. It's badly needed. It's badly needed in my community. And I think it would really enhance our community. It would really help aid all the conflicts that we have. So for instance, like I said, just take an example, in terms of political affiliation, take political affiliation. So in my communities, there'll be different people who believe in different things. I'm hoping that with nonviolent, if you get the skills and the training, you'll be able to have an open mind first. You'll be able to word your replies differently. You'll be able to understand and see the bigger picture. You'll be able to see that, why should we be aggressive about things, about something that this person may believe in something else and I may believe that it's civil liberty. Everyone is open to believe in whatever they want to believe. Yeah. So I think it's tolerance. In my community, we need to be more tolerant. We need to be able to tolerate each other, different beliefs, different cultures. And of course, this is the essence of my country. Yeah, we have different races coexisting same, you know, under the same roof. We need to have a better understanding of each other, be able to understand, take the good and take the good from each other and discard the bad. You know, I always say that if people can support different football teams and still have dinner together amicably, why can't people have support different political parties and do the same? And I also think that, you know, with this training, if we could actually, you know, instill that at universities or colleges or that level of society where, you know, they're about to fly off, I would say, you know, whether they're going to become lawyers or engineers, that's when they really want to be able to communicate effectively. They're willing to learn, you know, the tools and be equipped with the skills necessary for them to be able to do better in their lives, right? You know, also, if I have the chance, it would be at a, you know, at a younger level in schools. That would be amazing. Like you asked, how would we, those could be, those are possible plans. Apart from that, we could also do virtual classes, because I also do community communication classes now, and so many people, you know, there's always attraction. People want to learn. They're eager to learn, willing to learn in order to survive this world, right? I'm sure each and every one of us would want to be the best self. We want to fulfill everything that, you know, what we can do to better ourselves every day. So I do believe that if we do have plans to bring it to Malaysia, should be taught in schools or universities. Also separately, it could be done virtually, and we could train trainers. I think that's the most important. We should be able to train trainers in order to carry out the training. So, you know, I am so touched. You know, ever since I was a student, I'm so touched by Gandhi's famous quote, which is, "Non-violence is the tool." Wait, let me just look. Non-violence is the tool. If you can help me out here, Gandhi, the most powerful.
Yeah, non-violence is mightier than the most powerful.
Yes,
The sword, than the sword.
I wrote.
It's mightier than the most powerful weapons on earth. That's what one of his quote is.
Yeah, exactly. So I've always been a believer in that, and I always feel that that's fun. It should be okay here. See, okay, no. Yeah, sorry. I'm just gonna, because I was reading it today, the whole day. I don't know why it's missing now. Oh my God. Non-violent is okay. Just bear with me for 1 second.
Non-violence is more powerful and mightier than the most powerful, you know, weapon on earth.
Non-violence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of man. And I do believe in that. And I feel that in this day and age, it's not just about learning the strategies, right? I believe that the training is not just about learning the right thing to say or the right questions to form, like mediation training, the soft skills. No, it's also about learning the bigger picture, learning how to control your emotions, learning how to control your anger. You know, some people would say in societies, conflicts. I see this all the time in my community. Conflicts happen because I'm a ticking time bomb. You know, I keep it all in, and one day I just blow up. You know, it's in order to avoid that. I think it is important for us to learn to communicate more effectively with each other, and of course, it is, you know, there's no other better, I would say, better concept or no other better role model than, you know, Mahatma Gandhi, the greatest soul himself. So it would be an honor for us to collaborate with, you know, with you and your team to bring about the training, nonviolent training in my community. So I hope that
Yes,
answers.
definitely, definitely. You see, we are looking forward to our first session with your team in Malaysia, their workshop on non-violent communication, and we really look forward to having sessions with school students, university students, with lawyers, and other stakeholders. So I
No,
think we should start, even if there are 30 people to start with. We
yeah,
should start.
right. No, but that's the thing that I am very interested to learn, because, like I said, a lot of people find it, they think it's artificial. Even when I carry out my own trainings, I had one a few days ago. It's always about acronyms, right? I told them, you need to be an active listener. You need to insert empathy in all that you do. You need to be non-judgmental. You need to have ways to create solutions. You need to communicate like this, ask open-ended questions, posture. But actually, it's more than that. It's about learning to control your emotions, learning to be able to tolerate the other party or other parties, learning to understand and appreciate the individuality of different people. I think that could also that if I'm not wrong, that's also part of non-violent, right? In order to avoid conflict, in order to avoid the bubbling up, or in order to avoid provocation. That's also quite important to learn. And I do believe I would think that would be part of your training, right?
In fact, one important question which comes linked to this, you see, is that especially what we are seeing in Afghanistan, we are seeing in various parts of the world, the whole essence of, conflicts between different faiths. How important is community mediation in dealing with conflicts related to faiths, and how we can promote interfaith dialogue, and with the key points being use of non-violent communication and all. In fact, I've been told that the United Nations is working actively to develop a new institution like UNESCO and UNICEF to promote interfaith dialogue and interfaith interfaith harmony. So how you see the role of community mediation in transforming conflicts between different faiths across the world?
Yeah. So interfaith is also very, very important. It's an important aspect of mediation. I almost went for the training, but then the coronavirus happened, so I had to cancel my trip to Ethiopia. That was also with UN. But I do believe that that's something that's not talked about. It's always taboo. But it's needed. It's much needed in this world in order to build, like I said, tolerance, and in terms of having a better understanding of each other. I think that should also be sort of in training form, in terms of not just communication skills, but also when it comes to the tolerance part, different races, different faiths, that should also be a module in schools or in universities, in colleges. That should also um, be be emphasized, where we have to learn, we have to cultivate skills to understand, right? Understand someone from a different background, different faith, different. I mean, people often say, it's innate, right? Especially if you exist in a multicultural society, don't worry. But actually, when we look nowadays, adults starting conflicts, or adults leaders, I can't really say, but political leaders or leaders are the ones who initiate such and such conflicts, or incite certain things that could be harmful, that could provoke the society, the community, or different communities. So I always believe that in terms of training, interfaith would bring would, as a result of bringing interfaith training, mediation training, we could also increase the understanding and tolerance between communities. Yeah.
Thank you very much. May I request my other colleagues if they have any question, Mansi, and
Please.
because I have now come towards the end of my set of, some of the questions. Of course, these were all developed with the help of Mansi. So Mansi, can you please come in a picture?
As best as I can.
Am I audible? So am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Hello, Intan.
Hello.
It has been a pleasure listening to you all this while, and my happiness is doubled by knowing that you come from the same law school which Mahatma Gandhi had attended long time back. And also you'll be happy to know that I have also done a degree course in Gandhian and peace studies. So where we read about life and thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi. So since you have already talked about non-violent communication, there is something very particular to non-violent communication, and that is empathy. Whenever you are trying to communicate in a non-violent manner, you need to empathize with people. But then there need to be certain limits to empathy, because it might bring in emotional biases in the process of mediation. So how do you think people should be empathetic while controlling their emotions as well at the same time?
That's a really good question. Firstly, can I just say congratulations to you? Amazing. I love seeing, another amazing young women who is really going after your dreams. Congratulations on completing your degree, and yes, it's just amazing. I love it from the beginning. I love how Mr. Vedabias has a lot of really empowered women on his team. It shows what kind of leader he is, which is really nice, and is assuring for me to work with him. So thank you for your question. Yeah, so can I just point out that Gandhi and I have something in common, which is we both did not make it as a barrister, right? We preferred the mediation route, so that's why I feel closer to him as well in that sense. To answer your question, how having empathy when you're overcome with emotions, or having empathy when there's emotional biases in a process. I always try, so I would say from both sides, from being solving a case or solving a conflict where I see there is a potential of that happening. I often try to make sure that this is a mediation process. I'll often try to make sure that the parties don't meet, or meet if they need to, meet at the very end. So obviously in a mediation procedure, you have different steps, right? Different stages, and you have different caucuses. So sometimes some mediators would like them to meet at the beginning, and then over time you have your own caucuses, you come in and you go out. So if I see there is a potential of that happening, I always try to delay the process where they have to see each other. So that's in a formal mediation setting. If you're asking in an informal mediation setting, I would say to have empathy is very difficult. It took me 30 years to really try to be able to do it, on command, right? I would say, I always say this in my training. Like I said, so in a few days ago, someone actually did ask me, a woman, like an empowered woman, also asked me, how do I have empathy for my difficult male boss who always, is always condescending or things like that? And I would say, this is the quality that everyone needs to have. And of course, this comes from training and practice. Even though it's difficult, but you need to be able to understand where the other person is coming from. You need to be able to understand why this person operates on a certain level. Or you need to understand why this person is so evil or so racist or so condescending. What's wrong with him? You need to be able to turn on your mediator, to not put on your mediator hat, even though you're not, turn on your mediator hat, put on your mediator hat and say, there must be something about this guy. I need to be able to understand why he's like that. And I must say that it's not an easy task, but with practice, and with practice, and the more you try to make it a normal thing, the more you try to train yourself, yeah, you make you'd be okay. But I think this is what I've learned. I think after 30 years, I realized that empathy is the secret ingredient of life. Without empathy, you won't be able to do everything else. You would start listening to things that you want to listen to. Without empathy, you will start to look for faults that you don't even, that you don't know, faults that are just there. So you will start to point, nitpick, or you start, oh, I just can't stand this person. But empathy, I always feel that is the cornerstone of life. In order to respond more intelligently, more resiliently, more maturely, more wisely, I always say you need to have empathy, and it's a muscle that you would work on. And I'm sure someone like you will get to that level and will make a resilient mediator one day. And that's my hope for you. And I hope that
Thank you. The feeling, the admiration is mutual. And since you have answered most of the questions, the queries which I had very beautifully, there is one last thing that I want to know from you, because the scenario has changed ever since the pandemic. And whether it be courtroom litigation or mediation, nothing has been easy for the people coming from legal background. So what
Yes.
challenges have you faced while conducting online mediations? And in particular, body language plays a very important role in the process of mediation. So how have you been dealing with such difficult situation ever since the beginning of the pandemic? Because understanding emotions and body language is very difficult these days through online. And see, we are not able to see each other because of the connectivity issue as well. So these issues might come up in the process of mediation. So what is the way out that you have find out to deal with this kind of situation?
That's an interesting one, Mansi. So the pandemic hit. Before the pandemic hit, I used to travel every month for work. Whether to do training or to attend conferences, or if there is a need, mediation, need to be somewhere else. So yeah, it's definitely a new normal for me, to not be able to travel. So in the sense of mediation proceedings, I've done a few, but it's really artificial, to the point where I told, I was very, very forward about it. And I said, I can't, because it's very frustrating for me. Firstly, like you said, new body language, and, to get everyone together in the same, to have to be on the same page, right? And to connect with the party, because obviously as a mediator, to be able to connect, to facilitate the whole process, I find it really, really challenging, very challenging time. But in terms of, that's formal mediation. In terms of informal mediation, I found that when the pandemic hit, it was easier to.
Intan, please be louder. Please be louder.
Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me? Is it better now? Yeah. So I found. Okay, so I found that, for the formal process, it's very, 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 very challenging. Like you said, eye contact, body language. It's difficult for me to sort of connect and facilitate a proceeding if it's online. I always find it very artificial. I don't know whether people are actually, paying attention or connecting with me. It's really the worst. So I try to stay away from formal proceedings for now. But in terms of informal mediation, I basically really was encouraged and inspired since the pandemic hit. My first ever town hall that I organized was the first week after we faced our first lockdown. And it was to create a connection between doctors from all over the world. And then they were sharing intel, because we didn't know at that point what was going to happen. I also connected organizations, so non-governmental organizations together, where they shared intel with each other. So different town halls, and also in my community, different people in the community that could help each other out. So the blessing, the silver lining in my lockdowns would be the town halls that I organized, and also the being encouraged and being pushed to start Amal Mediation to work on informal mediation missions. So I guess I couldn't do the formal part. I could travel for work, but I can still do informal mediation. I feel closer to my community. I can see the impact, and I can see, connecting different parties in my community and seeing potential and how we can grow together is also a silver lining during the pandemic. So I hope that answers that.
That's right. That's right. That's
Yeah,
beautifully put together. If any one of you, Mansi and Roji, if you have any some
please,
last
please
questions.
do. Please
Yeah.
ask away.
Roji and Mansi, before we close the session,